Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Voices. Nice for you guys to come back. And today we have a special guest, and I'll just bring her right on, Miss Lindsay Brown. Thank you for coming in. Thank you
Yeah,
for coming to the show. I always
absolutely.
wanted to interview with you, so let me give you a little round of applause. Yay! So,
Oh, I didn't
good.
know you'd have a studio audience. This is great.
I I'm trying to improve and make it better.
I love
So
it.
people like you will be able to come on. So I'm so excited. I've been coming to seminars and seeing you speak for a while now. So I was like, I need to meet this lady. I need to interview her. So
Yes.
thank you. I met you at HSPA this year, and that was great. First time actually interacting with you. I think I saw you on
Exactly.
off stage a little bit during some seminars and stuff. So
Yeah. No,
um,
it's awesome to be here. And yeah, thank you for inviting me on your show. This is great.
you are welcome. You are welcome. So, people want to get to know Lindsay Brown. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and just a little bit about that background?
Sure, sure. My history in rural Wisconsin is very interesting, let me tell you. It's not really. Well, I'll make it as interesting as possible. I grew up on a farm. I'm a farm
Mm.
kid. I grew up
Wow.
never taking family vacations, only showing cattle at different county fairs and state fairs and sleeping in cattle trailers, calling it camping. So yeah, growing up in rural Wisconsin was interesting. There was New Richmond is the town that I grew up in. So it's not far from Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I am right now. But I grew up with parents who um, we're very interested in their kids doing the best that they can, pushing us hard and making sure that we try our hardest. And I think that that has really translated into my professional life. But growing up, I did a lot of bale tag. I don't know if any other farm kids are tuned in to this, but jumping across round bales, running away from your siblings was a pastime that was really important to us. Having bonfires outside, just really living that country life. And then when I moved to St. Paul for college, I actually moved to St. Paul to go to Hamline University, and switched actually to St. Catherine University to be a occupational therapist. And one of the courses in occupational therapy is anatomy and physiology. And in that class, I saw a cadaver and I hit the floor so hard. I passed right out when I saw that cadaver because they opened up this woman's chest. There was the pacemaker, and there I went, just splat on the floor. And I switched my major the next morning to communications. So I was like, clearly the healthcare industry is not for me. I don't think I can do this. And so I switched to communications very literally the next day. And so it's kind of funny. I majored in speech communications or public speaking, which landed me a job at a coffee franchise company. So my first professional iteration was was at a coffee company called Dunn Brothers Coffee here in the cities. They have they had about 90 franchise locations in kind of the central corridor of the US. And I transitioned from PR specialist to food buyer for that company. And actually during college, while I was working for Dunn Brothers, I was also a nanny for a beautiful family. And it happened to be one of the owners of Key Surgical at the time. And so I got to know Key Surgical sort of on the periphery through, caring for these beautiful kids who are now, one of them's in college, and I can't believe that.
Wow.
But at one point, when I was, kind of finding my way at Dunn Brothers, a position at Key Surgical opened, and I was asked if I wanted to apply for it. And so I went through the interview process. None of my interviews were actually with the owner. He wanted to stay out of the interview process, and obviously I wanted to get the job, not because I was connected, but because I, had the skills to actually do the job. And got hired as one of the sales reps for the West Coast of the US at Key Surgical. And that was my entry point into the sterile processing world. So it's kind of funny. I ask the question all the time, like, how did you happen upon sterile processing? And the stories that I hear from people about kind of their winding road into the industry are just fascinating to me. And mine is similar, just kind of a strange entry point. But it only took a very, very short time before I absolutely fell in love with the industry. And so I kind of a side note, personally, my husband and I live just outside of Minneapolis, in a little town called Columbia Heights. We have 3 kids, our 12-year-old Lucy. 3 kids, yep. 12-year-old Lucy. Vivian just turned 5 yesterday. She embodies, like, her word in life is effervescent. Like, she's just this bubbly, joy-filled, just like ball of energy. Everywhere she goes, she just lights up a room. Oh man. And then little Lewis, he's 3.5. He actually just got his tonsils out on Monday. So we were at Minnesota Children's Hospital, spending the day there on Monday. So shout out to the sterile processing and the surgical teams at Minnesota Children's in St. Paul. Thank you for keeping my son safe. I really, really appreciate it. This year's been kind of a wild year. And I don't know if you want me to get into that right away, but that's just a little bit about
let's
my
go.
history,
We kind of went
current
through puberty and college really quick.
right.
So
those years can be just like kind of breezed over anyway. Come on.
So what were your influences, growing up? Who did you want to model yourself after? It could be a movie star, it could be someone in your neighborhood, it could be mom, dad. Who were your influences growing up?
What's interesting is one of my aunts, her name is Debbie. She was definitely she has a footprint like permanently on my heart, because she's just always been someone who's been so supportive, and so, like, the generosity this woman embodies and always has embodied is something that I really, oh gosh, I've always strived to be at least a portion of as generous as she has been, just with her time and her energy and her money, and just like anytime anyone needed literally anything, this woman was the first to offer. Even if nobody asked for anything, she would just like be the first to step up to the plate. And I just think that even to this day, I just look at her, I'm just like, wow, you're a saint of a human. So she was definitely one person that I really looked up to. And then the other one was a woman that I nannied for. Her name was Susan. And she was just this artist, this woman who just like wanted to raise her kids to be like these balls of fiery energy that just did good things in the world. And so in terms of looking up to someone as a parent, she's the person that I continuously just look to, and I'm just like, yes, that's the kind of parent that I want to be. That's the kind of encourager that I want to be. I don't want to direct my kids' lives. I want to be on the sidelines watching all the cool things that they're doing, and encouraging them along the way. So I think those are 2 people that I've really grown to just like have such respect for and such love for. Debbie from childhood and Susan more in college, but definitely them. They come to mind. So yeah.
I like that. And then you didn't talk about jobs or what they had. You talk about their personality.
Who they are. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
I think that's more important than whatever job you can have. It's just like what's the good that you're putting into the world? Like, what's the mark that you're leaving on the people that you meet, whether it's professionally or personally? Like, can you leave a setting and people are like, wow, I feel energized by that person. Like that's the kind of people that I look up to, and the kind of person that I want to be is just someone who just leaves a room and like my energy is still there lifting people up. I love that. I love the idea of that.
Don't make me cry, Lindsay. Don't make me cry. Don't make me cry, please.
No promises.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. Um, so okay, so let's just segue back. So you finished college and you're at Key Surgical now. All
Yeah.
right, so you're hearing about the sterile processing situation. What's going on there? How did you feel about it initially? How did you get in there, or did you even want to get in there? Did somebody throw you in there? Or
Good question. I love that you call it a sterile processing situation. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. You know, I feel like it's a common answer, at least in my circle in sterile processing, but it doesn't take long to fall in love with the industry. It doesn't take long to fall in love with the people of sterile processing. It doesn't take long to fall in love with the purpose behind sterile processing. And so it was really, really sort of a quick transition between becoming a salesperson selling cleaning brushes and tip protectors and stringers, mesh baskets, things like that into sterile processing departments along the West Coast, transitioning from just like being that salesperson to being someone who felt invested in the success of these departments. As a sales rep, you know, I feel like the leadership that I had at Key Surgical was second to none. Just my direct boss always was so encouraging and so motivating. Shout out to Rebecca if you watch this. If anyone who works for Rebecca currently is watching this, there's really no one like her in terms of someone who's in it for the right reasons and who just is willing to push you outside of your comfort zone in such cool ways. And so she actually encouraged me to take the education route to selling and essentially using education as a sales tool. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what's lining my pockets. That's not what it's about. It's about, you know, the department on the receiving end of these products having the right things that they need to successfully prepare trays and to safely prepare trays. And so that just like, once I once I realized the impact that a freaking cleaning brush can have, like it's just some threads or some bristles and some metal, but just the power behind a simple tool like that in giving sterile processing technicians confidence in their job and giving them pride, helping them realize pride in their job. Like, gosh, that was so powerful to me. And by the end of my journey as a salesperson, I had the whole state of California. And I just like shout out to anybody in California listening. I miss you. I love you. I'm so proud of the work that you do. And I just became friends with my customers in ways that were really, really meaningful. And still I'm very, very connected to them, even in my current role. But after being a sales rep, I transitioned to an education role and had an opportunity to actually develop education content and set, you know, my sales colleagues up for success, educating sterile processing technicians, not just being a salesperson, but being someone who could be a true resource, someone who can actually say that they're going to find the answer even if they don't have it, or say that they're going to find the product even if they don't sell it. Like that to me is far more important than simply saying, oh no, we don't offer that. So my journey at Key Surgical is just so near and dear to my heart, just because that was my introduction to this industry that I've absolutely fallen in love with. So I just yeah, I don't make me cry, okay? That's where I'm at right now.
So yeah, I think that's the first time I actually saw you on stage was Atlantic City. You had a presentation. I think I saw you like 2 or 3 years in a row. You're on a roll there. I'm
I
like, oh,
was,
that's
yeah. Oh,
So,
Yeah.
and then I like your presentations. They were a little different, more dynamic. You moved around, and you were talking about these brushes and things. I'm like, oh, that's stuff I could relate to. So I'm
Yeah.
like, ah, I can understand that. And I was a technician at the time, so I'm like, oh, that's right down to the point. I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Being the person tasked with making cleaning brushes really dynamic and interesting is sort of an interesting position to be put in. But I feel like here's the thing, like even something as simple as a brush is such a critical tool
Hmm.
for a sterile processing technician. So why not get pumped about it? Why not get energized about something so simple, because it is such an important piece. But yeah,
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
thank you for saying that. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
I love speaking in front of people. You know what's interesting? Put me in a group of like 5 or 6 people and I'm probably the quietest one. But
Mm.
put me in front of a couple hundred and I'm like, this is my jam. I guess I credit my public speaking degree for that.
So Key Surgical was great. You're not there now.
Mhm.
Um, any challenges in that sector that you learned from,
Oh,
that made you better?
everything I did there made me a better professional, made me a better speaker, made me a better communicator. And so I really, and everything was challenging because it was a new industry. And so and we'll get into this in a little bit, but similar to like having health issues come up, it's all of a sudden this new language that you have to learn, new terminology that you have to learn, new processes that you have to learn, new risks. And so, felt like I think I was there for 6 or 7 years, and everything was a challenge, but a welcomed one. And so I can look back on those challenges and say, yeah, that made me better. And I have my leadership team there, to thank pretty heavily for that too. Um, I transitioned out of Key Surgical to what was formerly known as Isham, now HSPA, and worked at the headquarters in Chicago and worked alongside Natalie Lind and um, under the tutelage of Susan Adams and with John and Susan Klasik and that team there, and got to do some really really powerful things when I was on the HSPA team at headquarters. And at one point, I had a conversation with Hank. Now, when I was at Key Surgical, I was actually one of the first Beyond Clean interviewees on the Beyond Clean podcast, season 1,
Hmm.
talking about cleaning brushes. And so, Hank and I kind of stayed in contact, and we had a conversation at one point, and he just said, what if in a couple years, if we offer you a job, would you be interested? And I was like, well, talk to me in a couple years. We'll see what I'm doing at that point. And it wasn't long after that I felt this calling to the Beyond Clean team. Um, and so I transitioned to Beyond Clean 3 years ago. And it's been, so here's something I've learned, and Hank's probably going to hate me for saying this, but um,
It's okay. Say it.
it's okay. It's okay.
It's just you and me here.
Hank is one of those people where like, and you love him or you hate, or you just don't love him. I don't say the word hate. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. But here's something that I learned really, really fast is just how stinking genuine Hank is about his overflow love for sterile processing and his interest in doing the best that he can to develop this culture of sterile processing and to infuse that culture with pride and with joy and with laughter and with energy and with education and resources and safety and money and all of the things that he can possibly do at the helm of Beyond Clean. He's brought us all as a team into that same mission, and it has been life changing. I thought I was passionate about sterile processing at Key Surgical. I thought I was passionate about sterile processing at HSPA. I haven't felt passion like this for an industry, and I credit that to just the unending, like undying devotion to the industry that Hank and Justin, and at the time Bob Mars, had. Um, and Mike Matthews too. When I joined the team, it was Hank and Justin. Bob Mars had just been hired prior to me, and Bob's a legend. He's an absolute legend in this industry. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Mars,
Yeah,
but
I
oh
am.
my gosh, like I learned from him when I first started at Key Surgical and looked up to him. So talk about people you look up to. Like Bob Mars and Chuck Hughes were the two people I looked up to most in this industry. And Michelle McKinley, she's another one. Um, those three to me were just like icons in the sterile processing industry. And so being able to work alongside them and getting to know just this raw, beautiful, like contagious passion for something really, really big and really, really special. Um, it was just a no-brainer for me. And I got scooped up and swept away in that feeling, and I haven't looked back since. And it's been really cool and I feel like I'm able to pay tribute to everything that I learned at HSPA and everything that I learned at Key Surgical, and put those things in the right place now in my role here at Beyond Clean. And so there are zero regrets. There are zero, everything has been a learning opportunity. Everything has been a unique challenge that has led me to where I am now. And don't get me wrong, like every day is a challenge. If anyone has met Hank Balch, like the 120 ideas he has in a day, I'm like, dude, pick two. Let's focus on those. But it's been so cool to just like, and he and I are very different. But we're also we keep finding similarities between ourselves too. And it's just, I feel like I'm part of a family, like just this cool, crazy, creative, like energetic family. And it's been really, really cool.
Hmm, very nice. And shout outs to Hank and Beyond Clean. How was your pandemic? How did that influence your career? Are you moving out of that now, or is it still in pandemic mode?
Yeah, good question. I joined the Beyond Clean team not long before the pandemic started. So I think it was a very interesting first year and a half uh, at this new company. Well, I'll talk professionally first, and then talk personally. But at this new company, who's well positioned in the digital space to endure something like a global pandemic that shuts things down. And so I think, we like to joke and say that our headquarters is LinkedIn. We live all over the country on our team, and see each other once, maybe twice a year. And so, as far as the impact that the pandemic had on professionally, it was a whirlwind, because a lot of healthcare organizations were looking for ways to leverage the digital space. And so I think that positioned Beyond Clean really well to support those needs. Personally, I mean, the pandemic sucks. I mean, there's still parts of it that are going on. It's not completely over, but I mean, our kids were home. We were trying to juggle family and having no childcare and juggle jobs, and a lot of it, like I feel very fortunate that I still had a job during the pandemic, and that I was able to make it work, being a stay-at-home mom and a working mom, and try to juggle all those things. Um, Childcare is a beautiful thing. And now that I'm back to having childcare, I'm like, wow. But that made the pandemic feel like it was like 10 years long, with just
Oh,
juggling everything. But fortunately, I'm fortunate to still be here, which I know there are others that aren't as fortunate. And so, yeah, it's been a couple years, man.
hmm, yes, it has. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. I know you went through a couple challenges recently. So would you like to share a little bit
Yeah,
about what you went through? Just to, show as much as you can and keep as much as you
yeah,
want, just to
sure.
inspire somebody who may be going through the same thing, or may go through it in the future.
Yeah, yeah. So first things first, cancer sucks. Like, I'm just going to put that out there right now. I was diagnosed earlier this year. I said that I had a wild summer, and I'll explain why. But on May 18th, I went to a routine eye appointment with my optometrist because I was experiencing some weird stuff with my eye. I had COVID last year, and after I had COVID, I started noticing that I had this weird, like, kind of like a shooting star, like a slow motion shooting star across my vision. And I was like, in my brain, I was like, it's probably a weird COVID aftermath thing. I didn't think much of it. But then earlier this year, probably March or April, I started seeing an aura in my right eye, and it started like feeling fatigued. I started feeling like my eye was heavy. I kept saying to my husband, my eye feels heavy. It's sore. It feels like it's heavy. And then I started to develop a shadow across my vision. I was like, well, that's weird. I might as well make a doctor's appointment. So I went to my optometrist, and he checked my vision, and he was like, dang, your prescription is completely different than it was the last time I saw you. I was like, I know, man, like something weird is happening. I'm seeing this light. I have a shadow. And he took a retinal scan, and what he thought it was a retinal detachment closing in on my macula. And if a retinal detachment closes in on your macula, you essentially go blind. So he was like, oh, this is pretty serious. I want to get you in to see a retinal specialist. And I'm a big believer that things happen for a reason, and that timing tends to work out in the end. And what happened is there were probably 12 different locations to see a retinal specialist that I could have ended up at that day. But I ended up at the retinal specialist who had done his residency at Memorial Sloan Kettering in the ocular oncology department. And when I got to his office, the energy in the room felt very heavy, like very grim. And, you know, hindsight is 2020. Now I know that he probably saw the scans that my optometrist sent him and knew exactly what he was looking at. And he took an ultrasound of my eye over my eyelid. And what I saw on the screen was an eyeball with a big, like, mushroom shaped white spot that took up over half of my eye. And he was dictating to the tech that he had in the room, who was taking notes in the computer. And there was one number that he took the longest pause before saying out loud. And in that moment, like during that pause, I was like, something's not right. Like something's really bad. And I looked at him and I was like, that white spot is not supposed to be there, is it? And he shut down his monitor. He turned on the light and he looked at me. And he said, you have ocular melanoma. I see that big white spot is a big tumor in your eye. Ocular melanoma happens in 5 out of 1 million people. It is considered a very rare disease. And based on the size of your tumor, the radiation that it would take to kill that tumor would kill you. And so the only option we have is to enucleate. And what that means is we have to remove your entire eyeball. He went on to say the prognosis for this is not good. And once it spreads, there's really no good treatment for it. And so in that moment, like, obviously everything was just like coming at me, like just lightning bolts into my brain, trying to process all these things. And I was there by myself. My husband and my 3-year-old had dropped me off because I thought I was just like going to get my retina reattached and go on with my life. And he said, do you want to call someone to come here and I will re-say all of these things, because there's no way that your brain can absorb all of this in this moment. And so my husband came back and my ophthalmologist told him, you know, your wife has cancer. It's very rare. The prognosis is not good. We need to take her eye, and I'd like to get it out in the next 2 weeks. And so May 18th was when this whole diagnosis happened. He said, you know, I would recommend if you want to get a second opinion, you can. I support that. but I'm not going to slow down in connecting you with a surgeon and with an oncologist. And, you know, having read more about his background in the ocular oncology department at Memorial Sloan Kettering on the East Coast, I felt this gut feeling like, okay, I know he knows what he's talking about. And so I didn't end up getting a second opinion. I met with my surgeon that same week. My surgeon is just this dynamite woman. I love her. Dr. Jill Melliker is her name. And she did an ultrasound. She looked at it and she said, yes, the recommendation stands. We need to enucleate because the tumor is, and what's interesting about choroidal melanoma is that it grows in your blood layer. And so it's thought that since, you know, blood is flowing all around this tumor, that it's carrying those cancer cells to other parts of your body. And so I got my eye enucleated 2 weeks later. And in that time period, I recorded this video as sort of like a way for me to process what it meant to be faced with having this crazy surgery and this crazy diagnosis that I was not expecting. I'd never had surgery before I got my eye taken out. Never, not even a minor procedure. I've never had surgery before. And all of a sudden I was faced with getting my entire eyeball removed, my optic nerve cut, having a replacement, like a fake eye put in, I'll never see on this side again. And all of these things were happening in such short order. And when I was faced with knowing what I know now in the sterile processing department and what happens and all the challenges that exist, I'm reflecting on this now. Not once was I fearful that surgery wouldn't be safe. Like I had this assumed level of safety with surgery because that was my only option for sanity. During that time period was just that assumed level of safety that I think all patients who visit a hospital feel. And all I felt was just this overwhelm of thankfulness, of gratefulness for the work that sterile processing technicians do. Because I know that not all patients understand the people behind the scenes. They don't understand the role that they play. They just know that their surgeon is going to save their life, and that's the end of it. But there's so many other people involved with setting that surgeon up for success. Like in my eyes, that surgeon, Dr. Melliker, was the best surgeon on the planet. But I know she had a team of people supporting her. And I just can't, I can't get through talking about the surgery without calling attention to those people who helped her do what she knows how to do best. And that's pluck my eyeball out of my head safely. You know? As you've probably noticed, I don't hold a lot back in terms of, in terms of talking about this, but it's just such a strange thing to be not only faced with surgery, but faced with more like mortality, really, is what it comes down to. Like I don't encourage anyone to Google ocular melanoma because it's terrifying to see the statistics. And I've grown to know that I'm not a statistic, that my body is unique, that my cells are unique, and that I'm doing everything that I can to see my kids graduate someday and to see them live full lives someday, because the alternative is doing nothing and not seeing those things. And so I was essentially told by my oncologist that Western medicine is of no help to me. So he suggested that I try alternative healing methods. So I see a spinal network chiropractor. I see a naturopath. My tattoo artist is actually part of an Ojibwe tribe in South Dakota, and suggested that I contact the medicine woman in her tribe. And so I'm going to do that in the next couple of months. And so just trying everything that I can. Clean eating, no meat, no wheat, no sugar, no dairy, no alcohol. But what's the alternative to all these things is like potentially not seeing my kids grow up. And so making the decision to make all these changes is the easiest decision I've ever made, because it's just so worth it. And it allows me the opportunity to tell my story It allows me the opportunity to show people that you can do really, really, really hard things and still be okay. Granted, I have really hard days where I spiral, sometimes just out of control. And I think that's part of the healing process. But, I do have a really cool party trick now. So I can pop my eye out whenever I want.
Oh. Mm.
I had to lighten the mood just a little bit.
Oh. Woo.
If you can't laugh about it, the alternative is to cry. And I've done enough crying over the past couple of months. Oh my goodness. I like to envision that. Oops. I like to envision that my cancer cells heal themselves every time I laugh. And so I try to infuse my life with as much joy and as much laughter as possible. Like I played a little baby laugh track for my kids on the way to school, and we were just rolling laughing this morning on our way to school. And just the endorphins in the van, in my soccer mom van on the way to school it was beautiful and contagious. And I seek out opportunities to laugh as often as I can.
Oh.
Some of it at the expense of my own self with eye jokes.
Well, thank you for making me laugh.
Sure. It seemed like you needed a good laugh at the end there.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever a nice thing to happen. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if that happened to me, how I would feel. And I was like, okay, oh, that's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. It's funny. Quick funny story. My daughter, who's 12, plays softball. And I told her softball team that if they won a tournament a few weeks back, that I would get an eye that looks like a softball. And they won. And I got that softball eye. And I'll send you a picture if you want. But it's bright green and it has red laces and it looks really creepy. And I love it.
What you gonna do for Halloween?
My son told me he wants to be a sucker for Halloween, like a lollipop. So my goal is to figure out a way to make that happen. Such a strange little buddy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I'm very much in this mindset of like, I'm going to control what I can control and just let the rest go, because I have to be very selective, very strategic on what captures my attention and where I put my energy. Because those downward spirals are really intense and really tough and overwhelming. And so, being as choosy as I can and what I give my energy to has really, really changed my approach to a lot of things in life.
I just started adopting that too. I'm thinking about what should I start cutting out.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling? Like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel? How can you put that into words? How you feel?
Yeah. I feel so. I think I'll answer this question this way. I was asked last week how I'm adjusting to my new normal. And I thought for a second and I was like, you know what? My new normal is way better than my old normal. And I think I attribute that to a couple of things. I attribute that to, number one, that I am as intentional as I can be with everything in life, with the people I give my energy to, the people I get my energy from, what I consume. Like I feel healthier than I've ever felt with all of these, health changes. And the book that I got all these health ideas from is a book called Radical Remission. And so if anyone is battling a cancer diagnosis and wants an additional resource to check out, Radical Remission is just such an interesting book filled with stories of people who were essentially on their deathbeds with cancer, who made some very specific changes and essentially healed themselves. And it's just wild to hear stories like that, and really beneficial when you're living cancer, to hear those stories of hope. And let those be the things that stick in your mind instead of the ones that are not as happy. and don't have as good of an ending. So I feel amazing, honestly. I get scared sometimes, but you know, one thing that book taught me was that fear is an acronym that goes forgetting every available resource. And that really resonated with me, and has kept me sort of out of that fear cycle mentally. Because when I do start to get scared, I think, okay, I'm forgetting that I have resources available to me. I'm forgetting that there are people and things and medications and supplements that can help me heal. And so that's really been powerful as sort of a motto, if you will, for me to remember in those scary moments. Oh,
Wow.
that's awesome.
I like that. I love that answer. I love that answer. You have me thinking now. You have me thinking. You have me
Yay.
thinking. You have me
That's what are you
thinking.
thinking about?
Just where I'm living my life,
Hmm.
I might need to make some changes. In fact, some stuff and some stuff you gotta get to a point where it's time to change it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's time for me to change a couple of things too. So,
I
like you
love
just
that I'm
got to
helping you
get to that
reflect.
breaking point, basically.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. It's interesting that sometimes it takes really awful things to make that happen, isn't it? Yeah. Like talk about like I love saying that I lost an eye, but I've certainly gained perspective because it's so freaking true. Like it's really true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
also lost periphery, but perspective is still there. Honestly, yeah. Well, and that's something I have to remember too is that time's not guaranteed. Like just because I have cancer doesn't mean I something else can't happen tomorrow that's not cancer related. That puts my life at risk. So there's a lot of different angles that I can think about this through, or different lenses I can think about it through that really sort of help me, get to a better mental state about it. And also, if you ever see me in person, don't approach me on my right side because you'll scare the crap out of me.
oh, now that's another thing from the think of. I'm like, which right? Which right?
Right.
My right, her right. Okay, that's all right. So,
Yeah.
so the show being voices, right? Um, if someone were to hear this interview 50 years from now, what advice would you have for them? What would you want them to know about Lindsay Brown?
Hmm. Oh gosh, I don't know that they need to know about me. I hope they take away something that I've learned, um, and that's just the importance of being intentional. Um, and I think part of that is focusing on what's most important and prioritizing. Um, I've tried really hard to be very intentional with my kids. Like when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids, and when I'm at work, I'm at work, and when I'm with my husband, I'm with my husband. Like I've been trying really hard to not feel like I'm multitasking at every junction, and instead giving my full energy and my full attention to getting to know the people right in front of me at any moment. And so that would certainly be kind of a life takeaway because it's really allowed me to deep dive into relationships that I otherwise wouldn't have. And it's been so cool to get to know people, and just saying yes to things. Like saying yes to this interview gave me an opportunity to have an hour-long conversation with you, which I've never done. And I feel so grateful for that opportunity. I really do.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. So
Yeah.
I've seen you around so long. I was like, you know what? Sometimes you never know, what opportunities you have to learn something from someone. So
I'm pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, she is pretty cool. Yeah, yeah. That's probably
Oh, no, I'm pretty dorky actually.
yeah. What advice would you have for anybody going through a struggle? Not necessarily cancer, but something, it might be something, a secret, something they haven't told anyone. What advice would you
Hmm.
have for them to try and get over it, find a solution, find someone to talk to about it? What advice would you have for them on that?
Yeah. It's hard when people go through challenges. It's hard to sometimes want to bring people in. Let me speak from my own perspective. I don't like to be a burden. And something that my husband has sort of drilled into my being is that asking for help and support doesn't equal burden on people who love and want the best for you. And so that's been really hard for me to sort of come to terms with and internalize, is just that understanding and the trust in the fact that people want to help and they want to support. And they also want to know how and when. And so if it's a challenge that you're just feeling like you can't bring anyone into because you don't want to be that burden, I encourage you to just not think of it that way if you can. And breathe. Like, I feel like just getting outside and breathing some deep breaths kind of allows you to get into a space to think more clearly about whatever it is you're going through. And it's healing in and of itself too. So breathe and know that you're not a burden.
Good advice. Good advice. Great advice, in fact. And I really appreciate you taking your time coming on.
The pleasure's been mine. The only thing that I have left to say is a gigantic thank you for everything that you're doing to infuse the sterile processing space with education and information and new perspectives. I love the idea of just like getting to know the people of sterile processing, and understanding their backgrounds, and the fact that I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin. Maybe there are sterile processing techs in small town Wisconsin right now who are like, holy crap, me too. So, or I've showed cows too, or whatever it may be. So thanks for providing that opportunity for connection, because that's really what it comes down to, and I think that's really powerful.
You are so welcome. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on the show, and I hope to have you back sometime in the future.
I love it.
All right. So guys, thank you for watching. Peace.